Well, I wanted to share some reflections about something sometimes referred to as gospel culture, because uh, I was at a gathering this week. It was of the Birmingham Collective, which is the group of Christians and churches that have been involved in encouraging church planting in Birmingham and in the wider West Midlands since about 2010. Started as 2020 Birmingham with the aim of planting 20 churches by 2020, but has continued with a further desire to see more churches planted or replanted or revitalised. And the topic we were looking at was this topic of gospel culture, of what it means to have healthy churches. And I wanted to just think through that a bit in one of these walk and talks. When the kind of the origins of that phrase, you may also have heard people use terms like kingdom culture as well, but the particular idea of gospel culture, I think really originated with a guy called Ray Ortlund, who is a pastor and author, a retired pastor from the United States. And he wrote a book called The Gospel. And Ray's argument was that, particularly those of us from what we might call a Reformed Protestant type of background, an evangelical Reformed background, we have been really good at emphasizing the doctrine of grace, or emphasizing the kind of the doctrines around the gospel, but may not always have been so great at getting a culture of grace in place in terms of how that affects our lives together as churches. And so it's easy to preach a gospel of grace, come and be saved. It is a free gift, not of works, that kind of thing. But then introduce people into a life of legalism. And sometimes those who live the most under legalism are actually church leaders and pastors. If you are a pastor, you might be just recognizing that now. And often it's the legalism that we place on ourselves. So it's not laws that have come from God. It's not even necessarily the expectation of others, though it can be. I remember realizing a few years into my pastorate in Bearwood that there were expectations, measures, metrics that I had set myself. No one else had done. And it was actually liberating to realise that. Now, what we were spending a bit of time on Wednesday was thinking about how we got that right type of culture in our churches. And what I want to do in this little video is just pick up on something that really sort of clicked with me. Because we looked at some Bible passages and we talked about gospel culture and the imagery in the Bible of it being sort of a family feel. So Paul, when he writes to churches, he talks about acting like a father. He even talks about acting like a mother in terms of his care for them. And there's that sense of familial relationship and how that will affect people. So for Paul, that familial relationship liberated him to be willing to work hard, not to take pay from the church, but be working day and night, and to do that with a free and joyful attitude. But what struck me was that it's probably uncontroversial, isn't it, to say church is meant to be like a family, and that we've got to be careful about not having sort of business type structures. But actually, family culture can become a kind of a shadow vision. I think this was something that came from Bill Hybels, the idea that we have shadow visions, where we say that our particular vision, our mission as a church is to be a particular type of church, but actually there's just something else that's creeping in, and so that we appear to have good biblical Christian motives, gospel motives, but in fact there's something else on the table that's snuck in as well, the shadow of the good thing. And how I think it works out, particularly with church plants, but also with long-standing smaller churches, is that we can start to enjoy a feel, how the church feels, and we can want that, and we can want what we perceive as the church feels like a family. And what we mean by that is we all know each other, we all look out for each other, everyone knows everyone knows everything, and it's familiar and it's safe. And then what happens is a church starts to grow, or a church gets to the stage where it's time to plant again, and things change. In a larger church, structures are needed. There's different ways of organising and doing things. Life becomes busier for the church leaders. You can't possibly know everyone, and you can't know everything that is going on. And so the idea of growing and the idea of multiplying becomes frightening. And it's hard, isn't it, particularly for church leaders, to work through that, because what people seem to be asking for all seems good and seems to sort of fit with we're meant to be family, we're meant to have this gospel culture. And what clicks for me is that what we're really doing there is we are confusing another culture with gospel culture, really the culture of small church. And really it's the culture of being a group of friends, not a family, a group of people, a club of friends, rather than a church family. So what I thought might be helpful was to try and pick up and say, what is the difference between true gospel culture and the shadow culture of club culture and friendship culture? And it's this, I think. Club culture says, I need to know everyone and to know everything. And the church needs to operate and run at my pace to fit my needs. Gospel culture says everybody needs to be known, and the church needs to run at the pace of everyone. You see, there's a difference there. One is inward looking, and it's about me and my needs being met. The other is about being outward looking and thinking first about the whole church and everyone in the church. Second, I would say particularly about those that are the most vulnerable in the church and how we care for them. And thirdly, about the overflow into a wider society that we want to reach with the good news, with the gospel. So that's just one thing that struck me. And I hope that you will find that helpful, particularly if you are going through the challenging, sort of painful changes of either growth, maybe moving from being a church of about sort of 40, 50 to being a church of 80, 90, or a church of 100 plus. And particularly as well, if you are at that stage where you're thinking about planting again, and it's going to be costly for that as well.